Hi, everyone. I'm just going to go over some brief information for week 5. So let me share my screen. And we're going to talk about straight line depreciation and go over just a brief example and the declining balance method. I'm not going to really talk about units of activity or give an example because we go over that quite a bit in the homework examples. But straight line depreciation, companies expense the same amount of depreciation for each year of the asset's useful life. It's measured solely by the passage of time. To compute depreciation expense under the straight line method, companies need to determine depreciable cost. Depreciable cost is the cost of the asset less its salvage value. It represents a total amount subject to depreciation. Under the straight line method, to determine depreciation expense, we divide depreciable cost by the asset's useful life as measured in years. So there's all different ways to do this. This is just one way, but this is Bob Company purchases a machine on January 1st for $20,000. It has a 4-year useful life and a $4,000 salvage value. What's the depreciation expense each year, the accumulated depreciation each year, and the book value each year using the straight line method? So first, we're going to figure out that depreciable cost. And the way we do that is 20,000, the cost, minus 4,000 salvage value equals 16,000. So you'll notice for each year, the depreciation cost is 16,000. We then go ahead and multiply that by the depreciation rate. And in this case, it's 25%. And if you wanted to know how to do that, if you took 1 divided by 4, that would give you 25%. The annual depreciation expense is going to be the same each year. It's just 16,000 by 25%. So that's all the same. So far, all 4 of these years have the same amounts. What's going to change is accumulated depreciation. So in year 1, we have accumulated depreciation of 4,000. If we took 20,000 and subtracted 4,000, we'd get our book value of 16,000. In year 2, we're going to have accumulated depreciation of 8,000, 4,000 for year 1, 4,000 for year 2. If we wanted to know the book value at that time, it's 20,000 minus accumulated depreciation of 8,000, which is 12,000. Year 3, accumulated depreciation is the 8,000 plus the year 3 depreciation, which is 4,000, for a total accumulated depreciation of 12,000. If we want to know the book value at that time, it would be 20,000 minus 12,000, which is 8,000. Then in year 4, accumulated depreciation would be 12,000 plus 4,000, which is 16,000. 20,000 minus 16,000 gives us a book value of 4,000, which is perfect. That is our salvage value. Declining balance method. It produces a decreasing annual depreciation expense over the asset's useful life. With this method, companies compute annual depreciation expense by multiplying the book value at the beginning of the year by the declining balance depreciation rate. The depreciation rate remains constant from year to year, but the book value to which the rate is applied declines each year. Unlike other depreciation methods, the declining balance method ignores salvage value. That's really important in determining the amount to which the declining balance rate is applied. Salvage value, however, does limit the total depreciation that can be taken. Depreciation stops when the asset's book value equals expected salvage value, and we'll show an example of that. A common declining balance rate is double the straight line rate, double declining balance rate. Formula for declining balance method: book value at the beginning of the year times declining balance rate equals annual depreciation. Okay, for this next example, Bob purchases a machine on January 1st for $20,000. This has a 5-year useful life and a 2,000 salvage value. What is the depreciation expense each year, accumulated depreciation each year, and book value each year using the double declining balance method? So what we can do for this, you just take the straight line method, multiply it by 2. So if I took 1 and divided it by 5, I would get 20%. 20% times 2 is 40%. So if you look at this, we have the computation and the end of year. Remember, for this, we are going to use that beginning book value at the beginning of the year. So we're not going to subtract the salvage value as we did in the straight line method. So for the first year, book value at the beginning of the year is 20,000. We just figured out our depreciation rate is 40%. 40% times 20,000 is 8,000. That's our annual depreciation expense. And at this point, that's also our accumulated depreciation. Our book value right now is 20,000 minus the 8,000 accumulated depreciation. And that's how we start the next year when we're going to calculate the next year's depreciation. So the book value at the beginning of the year is 12,000. Depreciation rate is 40%. If we multiply 12,000 times 40%, we'll get annual depreciation expense of 4,800. Accumulated depreciation is the 8,000 plus the 4,800, which is 12,800. The book value at this point is the 20,000 minus this accumulated depreciation of 12,800. That gives us a 7,200 book value. Year 3, beginning or book value beginning of year is 7,200 times 40% is $2,880. Our accumulated depreciation is the 12,800 plus the 2,880, which gives us 15,680. Our book value is the 20,000 minus 15,680, which is $4,320. Year 4, book value, $4,320. If you notice, the ending book value for the 1 year becomes the beginning book value for the next. So it's $4,320 times 40%, which is $1,728. Accumulated depreciation is 15,680 plus 1,728, which is $17,408. Book value is the 20,000 minus $17,408, which is $2,592. That's our book value at the beginning of the year. $2,592 times 40% does not equal $592. It actually equals $1,036.80. However, if we took that much depreciation, we would have accumulated depreciation that would be higher. And when we subtracted that from the book value, it would exceed the salvage value, which we cannot do. So what we do for this is we have to figure out how to get to 18,000 accumulated depreciation because our salvage value, remember, is $2,000 in the problem. We point that out, it's right here, that first sentence. So easy way to get to 18,000, if you had 18,000, if you had 20,000 and you subtracted 18,000 accumulated depreciation, you'd get your book value of 2,000, right? So we know our accumulated depreciation needs to be 18,000. So how much would the annual depreciation expense be? Well, it's 18,000 minus 17,408. That would be $592. So you can do it that way. That's one way to do it. Another way, of course, you want to compute what the actual depreciation expense is, just so you know if it's under, over, where is it? But another way there's all different ways you can come up with this 592. Another way is to just remember that you've got 17,408. Your accumulated depreciation is going to be 18,000. 18,000 minus 17,408 is 592. However it works best for you, you just have to remember that last year depreciation for this double declining balance method is going to be either, it could be less or more. In our case, it's less than the actual calculation of that depreciation. Hopefully that made sense to everybody. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Hopefully my calculations are accurate. I went over them several times, so hopefully they are. But have a great week, everybody. If you have any questions, please reach out. Bye, everybody.